Hey everyone, welcome back to Brown Coat Nerd. Today we're going to be looking at something that's been like 2 years in the making. We're going to take a look at the Spanish Star 30M. Now, if you might remember, about 2 years ago, a good friend of mine had purchased this very pistol off of Gunbroker, and I did a real short video of the gun when I was over at his place, doing a few short videos on some things from his collection. But I basically left drool marks on it. And it wasn't much of a review. He didn't have a chance to shoot it yet, and as a matter of fact, he never ended up shooting it. He has completely taken this gun apart and has told me that he doesn't think it ever has been fired. And for me looking at it, I would have to agree. So I'm kind of torn because I always like to shoot things that are in my collection, but this thing is something special. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. And it's almost like a time capsule because like everything that originally came with this gun is still here. And at the end of the video, if I remember, I will go through all these manuals page by page in case anyone is curious. It does have the disassembly instructions and diagram on this, which I always see people asking questions about that. But we have the original Model 30M safety directions. The inter arms little kind of safety. We gave you this pamphlet so you can't sue us. Piece of paper. And Inter Arms is the company that basically imported these stars back in the day for the American commercial market. I do have some videos on the Star 28, and you'll see a lot of those. I'm not sure if Inter Arms actually ever imported the 28. They may have, but most of what I've seen of the 28s are military surplus. And there will also be Model 30s that are military surplus. But what we see over here are typically ones that were made for the civilian market, just to point that out. Another warranty information that comes from Inter Arms. And then we have the gun itself, still in the star logoed sack. Whoop. And of course, this one did only come with one magazine. I am not sure how many they would originally come with. That's one of the downsides of this gun. The magazines are unfortunately not very common and they're rather pricey when you do come across them. And then we got another little star pamphlet. We gave you this so you can't sue us. There's a random piece of paper in here. I don't know what that is. I looked back at my old video when Chuck originally got this gun and it was in there, so there it shall stay. Then we also have a rear sight adjustment tool. As you can see, the rear sight is adjustable for windage. A nylon cleaning brush. And then, of course, we do have a plastic cleaning rod as well. So, let's get this stuff out of the way. And just in case you're curious, a little bit more close-up look at this box. If you got one of the Star BM pistols that came in like crazy, this is kind of similar to some of those clear hard plastic boxes. I think they had like blue and green plastic boxes as well. Anyways, let me wipe some of the oil off of this that I got from the bag. So like I said, this one I have not fired yet. The 28 I did shoot quite a bit, and that gun I absolutely loved. And just real quick, because I'm getting ahead of myself, if you're wondering what this is what I like to call the Poor Man Sig P210. Star came out with kind of this series of pistols. A lot of times people will call them the 30 series, even though they started out at 28. That was the first model. And that was actually designed to be entered into the U.S. pistol trials when the U.S. was looking for a replacement for the 1911. Ironically, that gun apparently did absolutely horrible in the trials. I came across one video or article where they bring up that the U.S. military couldn't even get through a mag without a malfunction, which was absolutely absurd because that M28 that I had, specifically it was the DA model, not really still 100% positive what the DA meant. But anyways, it wasn't double action only, a single action, double action. And that gun was absolutely wonderful. I never had a single issue with it. It was extremely accurate. And then they came out, they basically just improved upon that with the Model 30. And Ian recently did a video on the Megastar, which you can almost call like the final evolution of this gun, but not quite. It was a little bit different. It had a barrel pin in that one, but all of these guns were designed by Eduardo Zomacola, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But there's word that the U.S. was maybe looking for a replacement for that Beretta they chose to replace the 1911 with. Um, and so Star designed the Model 30, which is what we have here. Now, those trials, I don't believe, ever came to anything. That talk never really turned into anything. As you know, we had the M9 for many, many years. But so they made the Model 30 kind of with the thoughts of possibly entering this into the U.S. trials. Like I said, that didn't happen. Then they also came out with the Model 31, which is an even further evolution of this. All of these were in 9mm, by the way. And then what you can almost call the final iteration was the Megastar. I do believe that was actually made kind of alongside these as these were being produced throughout the different model variations. And those were available in 10mm and 45 ACP. Once again, Forgotten Weapons has an amazing video on that gun. And after watching it, I now need to get myself one. So the Model 30 series was made. I've seen some year variations on this, so it's safe to say they were made from the late 70s to the mid to late 1990s. Star itself did go out of business in 97. The 30 series was made from 1989 to 1994, and this particular one is a 94 production year, so it was the last year that these were made. That specific year, there were 4,048 of the Model M's produced. Now, Star would also offer like little subcategory variations throughout the 30 series. I don't think they did this for the 28. I could be wrong. I believe they only did this for the 30 and 31, but I am not positive. So all of those models will have a couple different numbers behind it. This one is an M, which means military or full-length slide. They also had a model that would be the 30P, and that was police. And the only difference on that one was the slide was just a little bit shorter, so a little more compact. And then you also had the K option, and that meant that the frame was aluminum rather than steel, because this is an all-steel gun. This is very hefty. So you could see a full-sized slide with the K prefix, or the shorter slide with the K prefix. That was just for the frame. But the most common one, it looks like in production at least, was the all steel full-length slide models. So, like I said, these were mostly imported by Interarms, if not solely imported by Interarms. Once again, now we're starting to get some surplus models of these coming in, so those will be imported by different people, obviously. But if you see a Interarms importation logo like we have right here, you can be, that's without a doubt was one made for the civilian market. Now, most of these will have a blued finish. You will also see some with kind of a satin nickel type finish. This one, obviously, what caught my eye so much about this, as well as the guy I traded with for it, was how it has kind of a plum color. It's a two-tone black and plum. Now, I think in the original video I did of this, where we're just kind of unboxing and looking at it and drooling all over it, either mentioned in the video or in the comments, that I felt like Star probably did this on purpose, just because, it looks, really nice. And yes, we have been safety checked. And so a lot of people were commenting, no, they just messed up on the bluing. Had other people commenting saying, oh, this just simply happens with age. And I am willing to admit when I am wrong. So this did not come about with age, as my Star Model 28 was actually much older than this, and it still has a nice black finish. But often, and I brought this up too, when you get this plum color, a very easy example would be these Makarovs. They almost always have a plum colored safety and a plum colored hammer here. And that wasn't really anything they did on purpose. That was just, I don't know if it's like the temperature being off during the bluing process, or the salt mixture being off, or some other chemical compound in there. But basically, it just comes out plum colored. It's still going to do its job as far as corrosion resistance, but it's just plum, and it's supposed to be black. So typically, from what I've seen, is lots of times guns built for the commercial market, when they come out plum colored, they don't let them go out the door like that. Now, I don't know if it's something where they just have to send it back through the bath. That's beyond my knowledge. What would the process be at correcting this? If Star saw it and they're just like, you know what, just send it through. It's simpler or cheaper to do that. Or if they saw it and it was a mistake and were just like, well, dang, that just looks good though. But the reason I do know it was a mistake and not some kind of specific oddball finish is after I had purchased it or traded for it, took a closer look at the box, and here we can see that it is blued. Nothing special about the finish at all, or at least there wasn't supposed to be anything special about the finish. So this is not some limited, purposely done finish. This was a mess up, and whether they let it go through the door because they thought it looked good and wouldn't have an issue of selling, or if they sent it through the door because they were like, it's not worth it for us to try to refinish it and fix the problem, or if they just simply didn't catch it. Either way, it went out the door, and I absolutely love it. And me and the original owner of this have looked around all over and have not really come across any other photos or images or talk of anyone getting one of these kind of plum colored stars. So even though it wasn't like a purpose made finish, I don't care. It's absolutely beautiful. One thing that is worth pointing out is my 28, the entire barrel was blued, and it actually came out plum colored, and it was really cool. And actually this rear sight screw was also plum colored. Also, in my original video of this, when we were just looking at it, I mentioned that the barrel was left in the white. I was incorrect on that, as they polished the chamber section. And that's coming across the camera almost plum colored, but it's maybe ever so slightly. Looking at it just with the naked eye, it looks much darker. So yeah, the barrel is actually blued. They just polished the chamber. So I've been talking about this gun a whole bunch and really haven't said exactly what it is. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So this is almost kind of one of the early Wonder 9s. It's, like I said, it's 9mm. Double stack, double action, single action. The trigger on this is really nice. Now, like I said, this one appears to be brand new. It hasn't really been broken in, so it is a little bit stiffer than what my 28 was. But the 28, the trigger was absolutely amazing. This guy, for the double action, comes in at an even 10 pounds. So a pretty healthy double action trigger pull on that. Compared to my 28 DA, which was well broken in, that double action was only 5 pounds, 7 ounces. However, this does make up for it, because out of the box, it is got a very sweet single action trigger at 2 pounds, 7 ounces, compared to the broken in M28 I had. That was 1 pound, 13 ounces. So there you go. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that double action would probably loosen up, lighten up some with use of this gun. I will say, while we're talking about use, there is ever so slight wear right there. I think that might just become from working the slide. There's a burr there or something. But this gun really is an immaculate shape. Another thing that I've noticed is I've watched several, well, there's not a whole lot of videos on this, but pretty much watched all of the videos that are out there on YouTube on the 30. And a lot of them mention that these come with hard plastic grips. And later on, when they switched to the 31, they actually came with like a hard rubber grip. This one actually has that hard rubber grip. It is not a plastic grip. This might be something because this was the last year of production for the 30. So maybe this was actually like a very late model change they did to this gun before switching over to the 31. But felt it was worth pointing out these are actually a rubber grip, not the hard plastic one. Let's see, like I said, these were mostly imported by Interarms. Ian did point out in one of his videos talking about these that Interarms was involved to the point that they were actually kind of giving Star like, hey, you should do this. This would sell good in the American market. Kind of giving them guidance on what to do with these guns. What, if any, of those cues Star listened to and actually, put on the guns, I have no clue. But it seems like Interarms was very involved with the importation of these guns. And these really are great guns and have flown under the radar for years. It's also worth pointing out Colt did import 20 Model 30s. Apparently, they were considering importing them under license and selling them as Colts, or possibly, just buying the rights to them and making it themselves. Either way, they decided that it wasn't something they wanted to mess with, so nothing came of it. But those 20 Model 30s that they had purchased are actually marked with the Colt import mark, which is pretty awesome. And those were sold off to employees once they realized they weren't going to do anything with it. So if you see a Star 30 with a Colt importation mark, if that puppy is for sale, snatch that up. Of those 20, 10 of them were the PK, so the short slide with the aluminum frame, and the other 10 were just the standard Model 30, like we see here. I can't really compare this with the 31 because I've never handled one, but I can compare this with the original 28, which is what this, this is the further evolution of. One of the biggest things is the slide. See how it's kind of cut in here? On the 28, this was all just metal. It had a very beefy slide to it. The slide serrations were also much smaller and finer. I also don't believe it came out this far, which, as you can see with the safety, it did not leave you much room to grab onto those serrations, especially on this side, because the extractor on the 28, it was like the full length. It went all the way back to the safety. It was huge, and that was kind of the Achilles heel of that Model 28 as well. The sights are pretty much the same. The 28 did not have any color fill on them whatsoever. This is how the Model 30s came. They would have the front sight painted. You'd have two white dots or kind of a reddish orange rear dot. I've seen both on the 30s. You'd also have slide serrations, which the 28 had, although the 28 had a very large loaded chamber safety indicator. It was about the length of the extractor on that thing. And it would just stick up barely, so that it was, had a round in the chamber. It did not come up so much it would interfere with the sights or anything like that. The safety has been slightly changed in the shape and the location of the dots. On the Model 28, the red dot was actually down here on the frame. So when the safety was in this position, the red dot was exposed down here. And I believe the white dot was further forward on the frame. It may have been in the same spot on the slide. On the slide. But minor difference, and I think the back design of the safety is ever so slightly changed. But that's mostly the same. The beaver tail is pretty much about the same size, although it's much more angularly cut on the 28. This one has much more of a natural curve to it. And this also has serrations on the back strap, front strap, and on the front of the trigger guard, which the early 28s did not have. However, later Model 28s, they did include these serrations. I'm not sure if on the 30 it increased in the number of serrations. That's one thing that was really weird on my 28. It had a squared off trigger guard, but it was smooth. I'd never seen a trigger guard like that. And now that I'm looking at that, these lines like not even. Okay, they're mostly even. I think it's just the angle. Anyhow, what other changes did they do? Let's see, extractor, slide cuts, loaded chamber indicator. The grips also were a hard plastic on the Model 28. And this kind of had a different design. It had some horizontal lines back here that were kind of reminiscent of the SIG P210 plastic grips that they used. And then it is worth noting out that I've seen that the Model 31, which came after this, has a proper decocker. This kind of has a decocker, if you want to call it that. This is one of the things I did not like about my 28, but as you can see, our safety is on fire here. Let's go ahead and put that on safe. And then you will see once you pull the trigger, hammer still drops. So what's going on here is if you look at that firing pin, it's ever so slightly recessed in with the safety on. Take that safety off, it pops up just a little bit so the hammer can make contact. And there you see it getting pulled in some. That's one thing I actually really hated on my 28, but at the same time, I don't believe you should rely on a safety, and I actually typically don't like a safety on my guns. But it was just really cringy how you could drop the hammer. Now, once again, Ian, in one of his videos for one of these, he pointed out it actually can be pretty handy if you want to practice dry firing a lot with your gun. You don't have to worry about constantly hitting, your firing pin. They say that's not good on a lot of guns, and I do know some of the Star BM 1911 copy pistols. I do know some of those you really shouldn't dry fire, and people really recommend against it. So, that is, I guess, kind of handy if you want to do that, compared to just getting a snap cap or something. But another thing is it does kind of work as a decocker. If you got the hammer back, and you want to put it on safe, and you want to drop that hammer, you could always do that. Although if I were to ever do that, I think I would still just follow the hammer down with my thumb. I do know my M28, when I very first got it, I just had to point it down range with the safety on, just make sure it didn't fire with the safety on. And it didn't, but it's just something weird to make yourself aware of with these. Also worth pointing out, these do have a magazine disconnect safety, like mini stars. So if the magazine is out, the gun is not going to fire. Are these drop-free mags? I don't think I've tested this one yet. Yep, I knew on 28 it was. Here's your mag. It's got a little window there. Has a metal follower of some sort. And like I said, these magazines are stinking expensive. There is the inner arms importation mark. Of course, they did the importation mark very nicely. It's not really crappy like you see on a lot of the surplus. Here's our Star logo with location of manufacturing. Model 30M, caliber 9 MMP for Parabellum. A lot of European countries still have a variety of 9mm, like 9mm Largo and 9x21. Well, that might be Largo, I don't know. But yeah, they have quite a bit different 9mm than just what we call 9mm, which is actually Parabellum. So there are those marks. Let's see. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Like I said, this particular one was made in 94, so that is on top of the cool finish, a nice little bonus. I always like to get those very first or very last years of production. So 94 was the last year of production for the 30. They still had the 31 to make. And in 94, they did produce 4,048 of the full-length Model M's. So just throwing that out there. Okay, so I think I've pretty much covered everything on that. Like I said, guys, these are really good guns. They are a little heavy because typically most of them are steel. You do have that alloy option. Those ones aren't the most common, though. Also, keep in mind if you're buying one that's surplus, they're typically heavily used. So some of these parts aren't the easiest to come by now. And like I said, that's the reason I got rid of my 28 that had that super long extractor. And the only complaint I ever see people talk about was how their extractor busted and there's just no replacements available. And I even looked for like a year just to try to get another one on hand because I absolutely love shooting that 28. And so I ended up selling that off, actually to get funds for my Glock, I believe. And then coincidentally, my buddy Chuck called me up, and I had actually purchased my Hugo Mauser, which you've seen videos on. And I guess he was missing it, wanted it back, and so we worked out a trade, and he got his Hugo Mauser back, and I got this back. And I know some of you will be in the comments be like, "Oh, you got ripped off on that," or "You ripped him off." Looking at the prices, they were pretty much comparable to one another. I do know the price of the Hugo Mausers does seem to be starting to creep up quite a bit. The price of these has gone up a little bit, but not very much. But then you throw in the fact that this one is literally brand freaking new, and it's got this awesome plum colored finish. If he came out on top a little bit, I don't care, because I feel the trade-off is definitely there. Now I just got to freaking decide, am I going to shoot this or not? I'm like absolutely torn I'm gonna have to shoot it, guys. So look forward to that follow-up video that will be coming out eventually. Plus, you guys know I love my Set Me L's, and this gun just looks so good, you know, next to a Set Me. It blends right in. And it is worth pointing out that the Guardia Civil or D Civil of Spain did use the Model 30Ms along with, well, they didn't use the 70L, they used the LC, the collapsible stock, but it would have the full length rail like that one. So, you know, I love my L's. It goes along with them just fine. Not to mention, it's just a really good shooter. And if you guys are looking for those like little hidden deals out there, I do feel like these stars are an awesome deal out there. A lot of people haven't caught on to how nice they are, so you can still get them at a very good price. And like I said, I found this one, and it appears to be brand new, never fired. So those deals are still out there. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Have a good one, be safe, and stay shiny.